بارئ الخلائق أجمعين باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء وسيد المرسلين حبيب إله العالمين المصطفى أبي القاسم محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المنتجبين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. الله سبحانه. My dear brothers and my dear sisters, on this holy day, the 13th day of Rajab, which coincides with the wilada of Amir al-Mu'mineen wa Imam al-Muttaqeen wa Ya'sub al-Din Asadullah al-Ghalib al-Mawla Ali ibn Abi Talib. He was born right inside the Kaaba as Fatima bint Asad, his mother, who is also from Bani Hashim, approached the holy Kaaba on this time or around this time when she felt the pain of labor. And she said, "O Allah, I pray to you through what my forefathers have believed in," because she is from the progeny of Ibrahim alayhi salam and Ismail alayhi salam. And I request and I ask you, through the greatness of this boy in my womb, that you eased the pain of delivery for me. As soon as she completed these words, the wall of the Kaaba opened up. She entered, it closed, she remained there for 3 days. Then she came out with the baby boy on her hand. Abu Talib came, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi came, and he was named Ali from the name of Allah, Al-Ali. And that is the birth of Amir al-Mu'mineen salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi inside the holy Kaaba. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And this child was nothing ordinary. From his childhood, from his birth, in fact, before his birth, and all the way until this day and age, his life has mesmerized thousands of people, if not millions of people. Today, inshallah, we'll take a look at one of the treasures that are left from this great personality, from Amir al-Mu'mineen salamullahi alayhi, and that is Nahjul Balaghah, a book that unfortunately is not very well appreciated even among the followers of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. If you take a look around us today in this whole majlis, how many of us have read anything through Nahjul Balaghah? How many of us have looked at Nahjul Balaghah in the recent times? In fact, sadly speaking, even the academic world, academically speaking, in the world of academia, not a single publication exists in English on Nahjul Balaghah. Many people, many professors, many individuals do their PhDs on Islamic studies, on Shi'ism, and yet not one of them has actually examined Nahjul Balaghah, which is a sad reality. We'll take a look at it, inshallah, and we'll try to drive some lessons. So we'll just have a basic introduction of it. We'll talk about Al-Sharif al-Radi, the one who compiled Nahjul Balaghah, why he did it. And then we'll take a look at its authenticity, because that's sometimes being questioned by some individuals. Does it really belong to Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib, or is it somebody else's? And then Sharif al-Radi just put it together and attributed it to Ali ibn Abi Talib, salamullahi alayh. So we'll take a quick look at that, and then inshallah we'll take a quick look at what do people say about Nahjul Balaghah and Amir al-Mu'mineen salamullahi alayh? And then briefly we'll touch upon two of the many issues Nahjul Balaghah touches upon, and these are political as well as social. So over the course of the next 30 or so minutes, inshallah, we'll get some knowledge about what is Nahjul Balaghah. At least, hopefully, it will intrigue your interest in going back home tonight and taking that book and opening it up and reading through it. Al-Sharif al-Radi. Okay, so he lived a short life, 45 years. That's all he lived. He had a very short life. In the 4th and 5th century of Islam, he goes back, his name was Muhammad, and he goes back to Imam al-Kadhim salamullahi alayh. And hence he's known as Al-Sharif, Al-Sharif al-Radi. Very famous poet. His poetry was exceptional in his days. And he had a brother by the name of Al-Sharif al-Murtada, whose name was Ali. He lived about 30 years longer than his brother. And Sharif al-Murtada became the grand sheikh or the grand alim, the grand sayyid after Sheikh al-Mufid, their teacher. So Sheikh al-Mufid was the teacher of both al-Radi and al-Murtada. He died in the year 413 after Hijrah. So for about 23 years, Al-Sharif al-Murtada became the grand scholar of the Shia, the Marja'. And interesting, there is a very interesting story. Sheikh al-Mufid was in Baghdad. He says, one day I saw in my dream that Fatima salamullahi alayha had come to me with Hassan and Hussein alayhim as-salam. And she told me, teach them. He says, I woke up from that dream and I didn't know how to interpret it. How could I teach Hassan and Hussein alayhim as-salam? Who am I to teach them both? He says, that same day I was in the class teaching the students, and the mother of Al-Sharif al-Radi and al-Murtada walked in, whose name was Fatima. She walked in with her children, with her sons, Muhammad and Ali. And she told Sheikh al-Mufid, can you teach them? And he says, this is the interpretation of my dream. So immediately he took them and accepted them. He realized they were exceptional. And indeed they were, both of them. He became a grand alim and a grand scholar, defender of the faith. And Sharif al-Radi indeed was also a alim, but well known for his poetry. He compiled this Nahjul Balaghah. He is the one who put it all together. He looked after the sermons of Amir al-Mu'mineen salamullahi alayh, and he put them all together. Now, what were the reasons? He himself gives some reasons. Sharif al-Radi, if you take a look at Nahjul Balaghah at the introduction, he says, I was writing some books about the Imams alayhimus salam, and then when it came to Imam Ali alayhi salam, I started writing, and people, back in those days, as people used to write, they used to show to their colleagues, to their friends, look, here is what I've written so far. People were really impressed with the words of Imam Ali alayhi salam. They told him, we think you should just make one exceptional book just for Imam Ali salamullahi alayh, and his words and his sayings. So he says, I went out doing it. And he says, Imam Ali's sayings comprise wonders and surprises of eloquence and rhetoric and brilliant jewels of Arabic language. So people who really want to understand Arabic eloquence, they should go back to this book and Imam Ali. Imam Ali's sayings carry the reflection of the divine knowledge. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The word of Imam Ali alayhi salam are taught and inspired by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What else? And the savor of the Prophet's utterances. He reflects the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa in his speech, in his sayings. What else? He continues to say, Imam Ali's sayings are such an onrushing stream that its flow cannot be encountered, and such treasure of delicacies cannot be matched. You're talking about a treasure of eloquence, a treasure of knowledge, a treasure that we unfortunately have not spent much time examining. And hence, when he put it all together, he says, I saw afterwards to best name this book Nahjul Balaghah, which means the path to eloquence. In other words, anyone who wants to learn about eloquence, they have to follow this path. Anyone who does not read Nahjul Balaghah and does not apply its methodology of eloquence, he or she has not reached anywhere near eloquence, because this is the peak of eloquence and the path to eloquence, referring to Nahjul Balaghah. So this is what he said. This is the thing that he talked about. However, I speculate, and this is speculation from my end, that there was another motive behind putting Nahjul Balaghah together. And that could be more of a historical insight. During Islamic times, some Muslims emerged with their own ideologies about Quran, about faith, about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is the problem when people don't follow Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam. People, after the wafat of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, decided not to hold on to Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. Let's hold on to our own way of thinking. So they started to come up with all strange interpretations. Among one of the schools that came out was a very famous school called the Ash'arites, known as, founded by Abu al-Hasan al-Ash'ari, who died in 324. This man, although he seems to be the founder of the Ash'arites, his ideologies come from before him. Abu Hanifa al-Nu'man, Imam Malik, Ahmad ibn Hanbal, Shafi'i, they all fall under the same group, although by name they don't really call them Ash'arites. They call them as-Salaf al-Salih. They give them another name. But when you look at their ideologies, that God can be personified. God can be personified. When we come to the words of the Quran, Ar-Rahmanu ala al-Arsh istawa, the Beneficent, He sat on the throne. Allah has a hand, Yadullahi fawqa aydihim. They come and they say we take these verses literally. It is not up to us to do any interpretation of the Quran. And this is basically the school of the Ash'arites, completely deviated from the path of Islam, because such sayings would not come from someone who believes in Tawheed, Tawheedullah, someone who understands Tawheedullah. This group completely deviated, although they're still considered Muslims, but a very deviant form of Islam, which unfortunately today it is the prevalent form of Islam. Most of Muslims today, they follow this kind of ideology, although if you talk to many Muslims, a lot of them don't even understand what they're talking about. Then there came the other school of Sunni Islam, and that's the Mu'tazilites. And they have many scholars who promoted their ideologies as well. During that time of al-Sharif al-Radi, there were many debates between Mu'tazilites, between the Shia Imamis, between the Ash'arites. Shaykh al-Mufid, Radwanullah ta'ala alayh, Sharif al-Muqtada, Radwanullah ta'ala alayh, took a direct approach in addressing those people. They've written books about them, they've debated with them, to the point that unfortunately many academics today, including some Shia, unfortunately, claim that Al-Mufid and Al-Muqtada are influenced by the Mu'tazilites. The Mu'tazilites, they're influenced by them. They were inspired by them. Even some Shia academics, which is completely false. They themselves say, we believe in the teachings of Amir al-Mu'mineen salamullahi alayh. He is the basis for Tawheed, for religion. Ahlul Bayt are the basis. But you still have people who make these accusations, and it is because unfortunately these people themselves have not understood Tawheed. So, during an era which was the time of al-Sharif al-Muqtada, came a Buyid dynasty. The Buyids were somewhat inclined towards the Shia, although some say that they were Shia. However, I think they just looked after their own interest. Whatever is good for us is good. They were inclined a little bit towards the Shia, so they gave some freedom to the Shia. Sharif al-Radi, the compiler of Nahjul Balaghah, and this is my speculation, seized the opportunity that there is some freedom, compiled Nahjul Balaghah, which basically was, in addition to its eloquence, its greatness, a very subtle and beautiful way to present the words of Imam Ali to the public. All Arabs are intrigued by eloquence, regardless what faith you come from. Eloquence is something the Arabs really admire, study, look after. So, well, if you really want eloquence, here is a book which is the path to eloquence. You cannot have eloquence without Nahjul Balaghah. Here you go. Read it. Because if you take a look at the first sermon of Nahjul Balaghah, it talks about God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and His divine attributes. And that basically is against whatever the Ash'arites and the Mu'tazilites would say. So he's basically saying, here is what Imam Ali says. All you guys have not understood a thing about Tawheed. This is the true Tawheed. One day I was in the Haram, in the Kaaba, in the Holy Mosque. A man comes to me, one of those bushy beard guys, with short dashes. He comes and he says, here, take this book. I look at it, it's Tawheed. By who? Monotheism. By Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab. I said to him, take your book back, my friend. This guy himself doesn't understand what is Tawheed. You think he's going to teach me what is Tawheed? Take it back. You want Tawheed, you turn to Ali ibn Abi Talib, salamullahi alayh. He understands Tawheed. That's the first sermon. The second sermon in Nahjul Balaghah, it's the words of Imam Ali alayhi salam after the battle of Siffin, showing his right, the greatness of Ahlul Bayt. The third sermon of Nahjul Balaghah, which is where many Sunnis cannot withstand, called Ash-Shiqshaqiyyah, demonstrating his right in Khilafah and how the first, the second, and the third took it away from him deliberately. He expresses his opinion blatantly. Yet when Ibn Abi al-Hadid al-Mu'tazili, a Sunni scholar, will come to him soon inshallah, when he comes to do interpretation of Nahjul Balaghah, even though he's impressed by Imam Ali's greatness, but he shows his Sunni nature when he comes to that sermon. He says, despite all what Imam Ali is saying, this does not mean that he was to be the Khalifa, nominated as the Khalifa by Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. I say to Ibn Abi al-Hadid, what else do you want? But subhanallah, the bias sometimes makes even the alim blind. So, one of my speculations about Nahjul Balaghah is that beside its eloquence, al-Sharif al-Radi, maybe he sees the opportunity to introduce the greatness of Amir al-Mu'mineen salamullah alayh, the rightful path of Ahlul Bayt through a subtle, implicit way, and that is by compiling a book, naming it Nahjul Balaghah, and presenting it to the people. Authenticity. Many Sunni scholars, they started to doubt the authenticity of Nahjul Balaghah because Sharif al-Radi did not put the narrations nor the sources. He just put the sermon. He did not say, I heard from so-and-so who heard from so-and-so. He didn't do all that. Nor did he give any references. He just put the book together and presented it. So many Sunni scholars, when they come to read the third sermon of Nahjul Balaghah, they say, no way. No, Ali didn't say this. Because he is putting down the Khulafa. How is that possible? So they start to question the authenticity. There are two answers about the authenticity. One is references. This person, Xavier, he actually wrote his master's thesis at the University of McGill back in 1994. And the title of his thesis was Authenticity of Nahjul Balaghah. Okay. What he says, in all probability, Radi is the compiler, while there is hardly any evidence to credit Murtada. So the one who put Nahjul Balaghah together is which one? Al-Sharif al-Radi. Al-Murtada probably didn't have much to do with it. Okay? So that's one thing. Next, since a large portion of the book is present in the earlier sources, the generalization of some Sunni scholars in doubting the entire book cannot be sustained. So some Sunni scholars who doubt that the whole book is that of Imam Ali, that cannot be sustained because it's found in some other references. In fact, interestingly, Ibn Abi al-Hadid al-Mu'tazili, one of the interpreters of Nahjul Balaghah, he goes and he asks one of his teachers, He says, that third sermon of Nahjul Balaghah, is it really Imam Ali who said it? Or did Radi put it together and he said that Imam Ali said it? He said, my teacher smiled at me and he told me, I have read al-Radi's writings and his style is nothing compared to what's written in that sermon. That sermon belongs to Ali ibn Abi Talib. And I have seen it, the teacher of Ibn al-Hadid. I have seen the references in sources prior to al-Radi being even born, before he was born. I've seen references. So that is a false claim. We have another way to prove Nahjul Balaghah is that of Imam Ali. How else? Textual. What is textual? It means we read the text. We look at the text. We study the style. We look at Nahjul Balaghah from A to Z. Read the style. Does it change in style or is it just one style? It's one style. Ibn Abi al-Hadid, who's Sunni, Mu'tazili, he says, we have to question either all of Nahjul Balaghah is not that of Imam Ali's or part of it. Either the whole thing or some of it. Now to say that the whole thing is not that of Imam Ali's is absurd. Because we have proof. It is indeed. Some of them is Imam Ali. So what about the other part that we question, we're in doubt about? He says, if you examine Nahjul Balaghah, you'll find it all one kind of purity, one soul and one style. One style. And Ibn Abi al-Hadid was a alim of language. He knew what he was talking about. So he says, when I look at all of Nahjul Balaghah, it's all one style. It has one speaker. And that is Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. Recently came a alim, Sayyid Sadiq al-Musawi, and he put tamam Nahjul Balaghah. He put the whole sermons together. He re-modified Nahjul Balaghah because in Nahjul Balaghah there is some repetition. Even Radi says there you might see some repetitions here in some parts. So this scholar came, put them all together, and he's got all the references that people can go back to. And one thing, textual analysis is something accepted by the world of academia. Textual analysis. Academically, it's accepted. In other words, recently, in August 2013, at the University of Texas, there is this part of a play. It's called The Spanish Tragedy by Thomas Kidd. There are some lines in that play which the scholars, they thought, we don't know, did Thomas Kidd himself write these lines or did Shakespeare write them? So for centuries there was debate. Who wrote these verses of that play? Until last year, when a professor called Douglas Bruster from the University of Texas, he went through a textual analysis and he confirmed Shakespeare is the writer of these verses in that play. He confirmed it. So this methodology is accepted by scholar. Hence we can say Nahjul Balaghah, all of it from A to Z belongs to Amir al-Mu'mineen salamullah alayhi. He's the one who said it all. Praise for Imam Ali alayhi salam and his eloquence. His enemies would actually praise Imam Ali salamullah alayhi. One day a man came to Muawiyah. Now Muawiyah used to love people who would put down Ali ibn Abi Talib and praise him. Okay. So this man from Bani Tamim, he comes to Muawiyah and he tells him, I have come to you from the stingiest man, stingiest, from a man who cannot even put two words together, from the most cowardest of men, the most coward. Now, although Muawiyah is an enemy of Amir al-Mu'mineen salamullah alayhi, but these words, even he couldn't accept. You know, sometimes a lie would have a limit. You know, when you make a lie, make it a good lie. Muawiyah turned to this man and said, what are you talking about? Muawiyah is stingy? Imam Ali is stingy? I swear by Allah, if Imam Ali had two mountains, one made of wheat and the other one made of gold, he would donate the one made of gold to the people as a charity. before donating the one that's made of the wheat. And you tell me he's stingy. Eloquence. You tell me he can't put two words together. Who else taught eloquence to Quraysh other than Ali ibn Abi Talib? Salamullahi alayh. He's the one who taught Quraysh how to become eloquent. And you're telling me he's coward? Has anyone been able to defeat him in wars? Muawiyah then tells this man, I don't want to see your face in my kingdom. Get out. He kicked him out of his own kingdom. Subhanallah. This is Muawiyah about Imam Ali's eloquence. Some writers, there are some famous Arab writers. Abdul Hamid ibn Yahya al-Katib is one of them. Ibn Nubata is another one of them. Both of them, they say, we became eloquent because we memorized some of the sermons of Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. When we memorized them, that's when we learned how to become eloquent. Ibn Abil Hadid, when he talks about the sermon of Imam Ali, when Imam Ali talks about the surah Al-Hakumut Takathur, Al-Hakumut Takathur, what does he say? He says, I have read a lot of these things about death. Nothing has moved me like the words of Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib salamullahi alayhi here. And that is either because of my genuine belief in the one saying it. Can I repeat that sentence one more time? Because it just throws me off every time I read it from Ibn Abil Hadid. Either because of my genuine belief in the one saying it. Who's the one saying it? Imam Ali. So I turn to Ibn Abil Hadid. If you claim you have a genuine belief in him, why don't you believe in him? Why don't you follow him? Ajib ya akhi. Bias, subhanallah, bias. He's a alim. But when it comes to Shia, to Amir al-Mu'mineen, his wilaya, he becomes a jahil. Wal-'iyadhu billah. Some people are like this. You tell them this is the truth. What you're following is wrong. What you're saying is wrong. And you bring them evidence. You tell them, bring me your evidence. They have nothing. But they still say, no, we are right and you're wrong. Some people have that kind of mentality, unfortunately. Here is one of them. Either because of my genuine belief in the one saying it, or because the one who said it had sincere intentions, steadfast certainty, and his sincerity was pure, so the effects of his words was greater and quicker to enter the hearts. When he talks about Imam Ali, the effects of Imam Ali's words are much quicker to enter the heart because he's genuine, he's sincere. Muhammad Abdo, who died in 1905, so about 100 or so years ago. He says, no one of the people of this language, Arabic, but says the words of Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib are the most honored and eloquent after the words of Allah Almighty and the words of His Prophet. Sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. This was good salawat, but not the salawat of the wilad of Amir al-Mu'mineen, salamullahi alayh. Thank you. Now that person falling asleep in the corner and I just woke up. Thank you, brothers. So here is the eloquence and the great honest of Imam Ali, salamullah alayh. One day he was walking, Amir al-Mu'mineen, salamullah alayh, was walking in the streets of Kufa. And at that time, Islam has become larger. People who are non-Arabs started to become Muslims and they started to read the Quran. Imam Ali was walking, he heard someone reading this ayah in Surah At-Tawbah. وَأَذَانٌ مِّنَ اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ إِلَى النَّاسِ يَوْمَ الْحَجِّ الْأَكْبَرِ أَنَّ اللَّهَ بَرِيءٌ مِّنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ وَرَسُولُهُ. You see that? وَرَسُولُهُ. You see the dhamma there? This man, when he read it, أَنَّ اللَّهَ فَتْحَ اللَّهَ بَرِيءٌ مِّنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ وَرَسُولَهُ. He changed that dhamma to fatha. What that means is that Allah disassociates Himself. The ayah, the original meaning of the ayah, the true meaning, when you have a dhamma, it means Allah disassociates Himself. Allah and His Messenger disassociate themselves from the mushrikeen. Allah and the Messenger disassociate themselves from the mushrikeen. If you change the dhamma to fatha, what does it become? It becomes Allah disassociates himself wal-'iyadhu billah, from the mushrikeen and from his Messenger. One accent, one accent. It's interesting. You see how one accent makes a huge difference. I had a debate once, discussion. I wouldn't call it even a debate. It wasn't even a debate. A man who was non-Arab, he came to me once. This was over 10 years ago. And he was telling me that Quran doesn't talk about hijab. This argument really kills me when I hear it from people. It kind of gives me goosebumps. That Quran doesn't talk about hijab. And usually it is the non-Arabs who make this argument. I have not yet seen it come from an Arab who understands Arabic language. Someone who understands the Arabic. We have many Arabs who don't understand the Arabic language. So I'm not talking about those guys. Someone, a scholar of Arabic. But someone comes and says, it's not in the Quran. I say, how do you know, sorry, when did you learn Arabic? He said, I don't speak Arabic. So how do you know Quran doesn't talk about hijab? I read the translation in English. I say, MashaAllah. You read the translation in English and you come to this conclusion. Wonderful, my friend. One letter makes such a huge difference. I told him, can you tell me how much do you know about the Arabic language, please? What do you know about the Arabic language? What's a fi'l? What's a fa'il? What's a maf'ul bihi? What's a verb? What's a noun in Arabic language? Complete silence. I told him, Akhi, you don't even know what's a verb and what's a noun in Arabic. You're telling me that Quran doesn't talk about hijab? Stop making such comments. Fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You don't want to wear it, or you don't want your wife to wear it and your children. Say, I don't want my wife and my children to wear hijab. It's in the Quran, but I want to disobey Allah, Amir al-Mu'mineen, Rasulullah, our Ahlul Bayt. I want to do that. I will say, I respect your decision. No problem. This is your decision, I respect it. But don't tell me it is not in the Quran. Don't tell me it's not in the Quran. It's in the Quran. It's in the Sunnah. And once I gave a whole lecture about the hijab in the Quran and the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Which sometimes is quite ironic. People come here in the wilada of Amir al-Mu'mineen to celebrate, yet their attire is not that in the path of the acceptance and the pleasure of Amir al-Mu'mineen salamullahi alayh. Nonetheless, when Imam Ali heard this, he turned to one of his companions by the name of Abu al-Aswad al-Du'ali. He said, Ya Abu al-Aswad, in Arabic, there is a noun, a verb, and a preposition, harf. Noun tells about the things which bears the name. Verb tells about the motion and action of that thing. And preposition conveys a meaning which neither is a noun nor a verb. He told him, so write about this. فَنْحُ هَذَا النَّحُ وَلِذَلِكَ سُمِّيَ بِعِلْمِ النَّحُ. He told him, follow this example, and hence the Arabic grammar became known as Nahu. Nahu. From Amir al-Mu'mineen salamullahi alayhi. He taught it to Abu al-Aswad al-Du'ali. So this is one of the greatness of Amir al-Mu'mineen salamullahi alayhi and language. What do we have in Nahjul Balaghah? There are sermons, letters, and selections of sayings or short words of wisdom. The numbers vary sometimes because some people, they combine one or two sermons sometimes together, some sayings together. So the numbers, you might see some slight variation from one edition to another edition. But more or less, this is what we're talking about. What do we have? Content-wise, political. Let's see, what does Imam say about leadership? He has a beautiful letter that he wrote to Malik al-Ashtar, letter number 53. Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen salamullahi alayhi had Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr radwanullahi ta'ala alayhi as the governor of Egypt. Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr is the son of Abu Bakr, the first Khalifa. Inshallah, I think do you need a PhD to open this? I think sometimes, you need one of those. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. And he was a faithful companion to Amir al-Mu'mineen salamullahi alayhi. He is the son of Asma bint Umais, a noble, virtuous lady. She gave birth to him on the year 10 after Hijrah. 10 after Hijrah, Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr was born. Then after the death of the first Khalifa, Imam Ali alayhi salam marries Asma bint Umais. She becomes his wife. And he raises Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr. In the year 38 after Hijrah, Muawiyah poisons Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr. He was one of the loyal followers of Amir al-Mu'mineen, a man who never said no to Amir al-Mu'mineen salamullahi alayh. Whatever Imam Ali says yes, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen. In the year 38, he poisoned him, making him die at a young age of 28 years. He was a young man, yet he was a alim. He was a great companion. When the news of his death reached Imam Ali, he felt in a lot of pain. He cried and he wrote a letter to his cousin, Abdullah bin Abbas. He said, Ya ibn Abbas, Muhammad has been killed. Muhammad has been poisoned. He died. And rahimahullah, kana waladan lana. May Allah have mercy on him. He was like a son to us. Brothers and sisters, how many of us, when we leave this dunya, well, Imam Ali alayhi salam, say rahimahullah. May Allah have mercy on him or on her. Something to think about. After the death of or martyrdom of Muhammad, Imam Ali sends Malik al-Ashtar. Sends him, he says, you become the governor of Egypt. He gives him a beautiful document. He writes him a long document about how to govern. He tells him some of the characteristics of a leader is to have piety, taqwa. What else? Allah's obedience, ta'atullah, to obey Allah. What else? Supporting the laws of Allah. In tansurullah yansurkum wa yuthabbit aqdamakum. What does it mean to support the laws of Allah? It means to implement them. To implement them. Allah says this is halal, you do it. This is haram, you stay away from it. Now we can ask ourselves a question. How much do we support the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? To what level? What is my limit? Some people, you tell them, salat, siyam, they say no problem, easy. Khums, astaghfirullah rabbi wa atubu ilayh. No. That, khalas, no. This is between me and Allah. Allah will forgive me. That's his limits. Khalas. Other people have other limits. Much smaller, much lesser in fact. Some people say music. No, music, khalas. Haram music, that's between me and Allah. That's my limit. I pray, I'm a good person in my heart. We say, mashallah, let that benefit you in the qabr, inshallah. When Munkar and Nakir come to you, let's see what happens then. You know, the reality that's awaiting us, a lot of people don't think about. And only when they leave this dunya, they will realize that my God, why didn't I obey Allah? Why did I miss a single opportunity to serve the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Whenever we have an opportunity to attend the majalis of Ahlul Bayt, let us do so. Salatul Jumu'ah, let us do so. Help another mu'min or mu'minah, let us do so. Each one of these actions will help us when we are helpless. He tells him, support the cause of Allah and then refraining from your desires. Refrain from your desires. Think twice before you say something, you do something. How many of us say words and then we regret them the minute they come out of our mouths? Because we get angry. Or because I have a problem with so and so. He tells him, these are the characteristics of a leader. What else? What about to the people? Be merciful with people. Love them. Love people. Love to do good for people. Show your kindness. Don't be vicious with them like a lion who was waiting to eat them. And that's when he said his famous quote, they are of two types, either your brother in faith or your counterpart in humanity. This famous quote of Imam Ali salamullahi alayhi. Now, question to you, brothers and sisters, how many leaders in the world do you see that have these attributes, mashallah? I think some of those in the Gulf, they have them, yeah. Those with big fat bellies, maybe some of them, What else does he tell him? He says to Malik, do not say, I have been given authority. I should be obeyed when I order. You guys chose me. Khalas. All of you have to listen to me. There's no such thing as we have to listen to you. If it's in Allah's obedience, we listen to you. If not, then we have to come and show our protest. In fact, when you don't, that's when a problem happens. Now, showing the protest itself should be with the manners. Of course, you see someone doing something wrong, don't come on the internet and send out a massive email to 10,000 people. Approach him or her directly. Speak to them or write to them privately, not publicly. This is the akhlaq of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. But don't say, because I have been given authority, khalas, everyone has to obey me. What else? Do justice for Allah, justice towards people, and against yourself, your family, and those who you prefer. For if you do not, you will oppress. You know, one thing about Ali ibn Abi Talib, his words come into the heart because he acts upon them. He says in Nahjul Balaghah, one day Aqil, my brother, came to me knocking my door. Aqil. Aqil was 20 years older than Amir al-Mu'mineen salamullahi alayh. He says he came to my door one day with his sons and they looked like miserable. He told me, Aqil told me, can you give me some more money from the Muslim treasury? I told him, come in. They sat down, they ate. Then I took a rod of metal, I put it in the fire, heated it up, and I gave it to Aqil, who at the time had lost his eyesight. He couldn't see at the time. He told him, Aqil, hold this. Aqil held it. He was burnt. He started crying. Ali, what have you done to your older brother? He says, what have I done? Did that hurt, ya Aqil? He says, yes. He says, you're crying from a fire that was prepared by a human being. And you don't want me to prepare for a fire prepared by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to those who steal from the Muslims' treasury? That's what he does to his own brother, Aqil. He tells Malik, do not have favors just because he's your brother, just because he's your cousin, he's your son, she's your daughter. Go with the truth. Don't go with the relatives. This we don't see happening, even among the Shia community. People go with relationships, which is the mentality of Jahiliyyah. Jahiliyyah had the mentality, help your brother, whether he is the oppressor or the one who's oppressed. Doesn't matter. The brother says, help me, khalas, everyone go with him. Help him out. That's the mentality of Jahiliyyah. And we apply it sometimes. What else does he tell him? He says, you should love obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the truth, the haqq, something that is the universal way of justice and most comprehensive with regards to the agreement among those under you. That's democracy. You know, today democracy is what? Getting the consensus of what? The majority. Isn't that democracy? He says, go with the majority, democracy. Do what is haqq. Do what is justice. However, in matters which are not related to Allah, haqq and batil, give chance to the people to exercise their freedom. This is the utmost respect for humanity from 1400 years ago. That's why in 1997, Kofi Annan himself, he says, Imam Ali instructed the governor of Egypt to rule all his subjects thus: let the dearest of your treasuries be the treasury of righteous action. Infuse your heart with mercy, love, and kindness for your subjects. Be not in the face of them a voracious animal, counting them as easy prey, for they are of two kinds. Either they are your brothers in religion or your equals in creation. This was said in 1997, and I read the quote. I have it from the UN.org website. The quote of, or the speech of Kofi Annan at the University of Tehran in Iran. And last Salatul Jumu'ah, I mentioned it. I said this quote 6 months ago. There was a gathering at the City Hall where some counselors were present here in Edmonton. People of different faiths, Christians, Jews, and Muslims. And I gave this quote of Imam Ali. I had a Jewish poet. He came to me and he said, I'm a Jewish poet. The words of Imam Ali that you said in your speech are moving, inspiring, I'm going to make them an inspiration for some of my poetry. And then a professor at the U of A approached me and said, these words of Imam Ali are so powerful that I'm going to teach them to my children and to my students at the university. I thought, subhanallah, one sentence of Nahjul Balaghah moved people. Imagine if we introduce all of Nahjul Balaghah. Then the majority of people who are not biased, who do not have interests, will become followers of Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. Finally, let's take a look at poverty, social issues. Majority of the people, or millions of people in the world today, live in poverty. They don't have a roof over their head. They don't even have food on their tables. You know, sometimes we complain about the weather, we complain about some minor issues. Some people in the world have major issues to complain about. But one needs to be always grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What does Imam Ali say? He says, poverty is the greatest death, in the short words of wisdom. Greatest death. What else? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He gave the rich so that they would have to pay who? The poor. And therefore, why do we have poor people in the world? He says it right here. Consequently, whenever a destitute remains hungry, it is because some rich person has denied him his share. When was this said? When was it said? About 1400 years ago, right? Today, 1400 years later, a Nobel laureate by the name of Dr. Muhammad Yunus from Bangladesh, he writes in one of his books, the reason we have poverty today in the world is because 94% of the world's wealth is in the hand of 40% of the world's population. 94% of the wealth is in the hand of 40%. The remaining 6% of the world's wealth is distributed among how many people? 60%. So that's why we have poverty in the world today. Not because we don't have enough resources, but we don't have a fair distribution of resources. Now, we're not calling here for a socialist government here, or socialist mentality or ideologies. Not at all. Islam promotes business, doing work. But at the same time, if people pay their dues, the khums and the zakat, if there was a fair justice system, you would not see a single poor person. Let alone the people. The Shia, if each and every person pays their khums and zakat, there would not be a single poor Shia in the world. But that is not the case, unfortunately. Because some people are not paying. Then he says, besides giving all sorts of products of the earth to the needy and the destitute by way of the alms. Products of the earth. Interestingly, you know what? In Islam truly encourages people to go work. One methodology, one way, there are many, of eradicating poverty by encouraging people to go and farm. Give people a piece of land and say, go farm it. Make money of it. In fact, Imam Ali salamullahi alayh, he was what we may call today a developer. He used to go a piece of land that was not owned by anyone. No one owns it. He claims it. He farms it. When he farms it, it's all good. He donates the whole farm to a poor person, a slave whom he frees, and he gives the farm to him. He says, take it. It's yours. It is said he freed 1,000 slaves this way. 1,000 slaves were freed by Amir al-Mu'mineen salamullahi alayh this way. He develops the land, gets it all ready, up and running. He frees a slave and he goes to him. It's yours, take it. If today we can help the mu'mineen and the mu'minat in the community, in the society, there would not be a single poor person in the world. Imam Ali is too great to be described in so few minutes. In fact, no books would be able to describe his greatness. He tells Kumail, he says, here there is abundant knowledge, lots of knowledge. If I can only find people whom I can transfer it to. So whatever knowledge we have of Amir al-Mu'mineen Salamullah alayhi is a fraction of his greatness. Today, my dear brothers and my dear sisters, coincide with his wiladah, his birthday. Imam Ali used to support the poor, used to help the orphans. Today, we turn to him and we say, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, we are also poor. We are in need of your shafa'ah. We are in need of your guidance. We are in need of your help. And here we have come today. All of you brothers and sisters, you came today because you love Ali ibn Abi Talib, salamullahi alayhi. And hence you attended here tonight. All of you are his guests. And Imam Ali salamullah alayhi does not let down his guests and the people who pray for him, or the people who follow him and love him. A man says, I came to the ziyarah of Amir al-Mu'mineen salamullahi alayhi. I saw one of the people at the checkpoints. No, today, even today, when you go to Najaf, sometimes you get some checkpoints. Back in the old days, people also had checkpoints. He said, this officer at the checkpoint really bothered me, really hurt me. So I told him, I'm going to go to Ali ibn Abi Talib and I'm going to complain to him about you. He says, I went to Ali ibn Abi Talib, the shrine, and I prayed. I said, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, I am your guest. And so, this officer hurt me. I want you to take my revenge from him. I'm your guest. After insisting upon Amir al-Mu'mineen salamullahi alayhi, I'm going to summarize the story. After insisting upon him, Imam Ali comes to him in the dream. He tells him, this officer, forgive him for me, for my sake. He said, why, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, should I forgive him? He hurt me. I am your guest. He says, and that's why I have come to you, because you are my guest. And you requested me. You asked me. So I will not let you down. However, this man, he will become my follower, my Shia. This man, one day he was coming out on his horse with other officers. When they came by my shrine, he alone, out of all the officers, dismounted from his horse, stepped down, looked at the shrine of Amir al-Mu'mineen salamullahi alayhi, and he said, Assalamu alayka ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, with respect. And he was not a Shia, but he showed his reverence, his respect to Amir al-Mu'mineen salamullahi alayhi. Imam Ali told this man in the dream, because of this action, I don't want to hurt him. I will guide him. You go back to him and you tell him, on the day so and so, at so and so time, you dismounted from your horse and no one of the officers saw you. Apparently, somehow he managed to do it in a way that the other officers would not see him. And because of that, Imam Ali says to you that he forgives you. You tell him that. The man said, I woke up from my dream. After I finished my ziyarah, I headed back. I saw the same officer. He looked at me and he said, so did you complain about me to Imam? To your Imam? He said, yes, I did. But he said to me that he will not hurt you because on so and so day, at so and so time, you were with a bunch of officers and you dismounted from your horse out of respect for Amir al-Mu'mineen. Didn't that happen? Said the officer looked at me in shock. He said, no one knows about this. I did it in a way where the officers, no one saw me. He said, that's why Imam Ali said, he will honor this from you and he will not hurt you. He said, then I believe in Ali ibn Abi Talib salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. because of this one action, one gesture of respect, it was a source of guidance, mercy. We here tonight, brothers and sisters, come as guests to Amir al-Mu'mineen salamullahi alayh. And we pray to Allah that He also bless us with this kindness, with this mercy, to make us and our children until the day of judgment among His sincere Shia, and to grant us His shafa'ah in dunya, in the qabr, and in the akhirah. We'll conclude with the ziyarah of Amir al-Mu'mineen salamullahi alayh, known as ziyarah of Aminullah. My dear brothers and my dear sisters, this ziyarah, whenever you go to the ziyarah of any of the ma'sumeen's shrines alayhimus salam, recite this ziyarah, ziyarat Aminullah, because it is said when you recite this ziyarah, the ziyarah will be put on a plate made of noor and presented to the Imam of our time, Ajjalallah ta'ala farajahu al-Sharif. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala where he will, inshallah, keep it for his followers. This ziyarah, this is narrated by Sheikh Abbas al-Qummi in Mafatih al-Jinan. So we will turn to Amir al-Mu'mineen salamullahi alayhi with ziyarat Aminullah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. إصالة عن نفسي ونيابة عن والدي ووالدي والدي ومن أوصاني بالدعاء أزور سيدي ومولاي أمير المؤمنين صلوات الله وسلامه عليه. السلام عليك يا أمين الله في أرضه وحجتي على عباده. السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين، أشهد أنك جاهدت في الله حق جهاده وعملت بكتابه واتبعت سنن نبيه صلى الله عليه وآله حتى دعاك الله إلى جواره فقبضك إليه باختياره وألزم أعداك الحجة مع ما لك من الحجج البالغة على جميع خلقه.